Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to today's Council on Foreign Relations meeting with Vice Admiral Frank Whitworth. I'm Massimo Calabresi from brief introduction, and I'll use questions and we can do Vice Admiral Frank Whitworth is the 8th Director of the National Geospatial-Agency, a role he's held since June 3rd, 2022. He's a graduate of Duke University and Georgetown University and a member of the Council. Whitworth has had a distinguished career with key leadership roles in intelligence for the U.S. military, including command positions at the Joint Intelligence Center, U.S. Center Command. His numerous awards include the Defense Security Service Medal, the Bronze Star, and France's Médaille de la Défense. So, that's that one. Thank you for doing this. It's a fascinating time to be having this conversation. Since we're on the record, and since we were brought out, yes, let me start by asking just to define a little bit the work of NDA, and the name of security products. It may be helpful as we turn in a little while today, guys, to get a sense of the size of the organization, staff, budget, secretary.
Great. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for everyone for being here. I'm honored to be here at the Council. National Geospatial-Agency. When we think about the mission, if there are 3 words to memorize, it would be targeting, warning, safety. And that latter one, safety and navigation. We'll detail what that means, but just think about targeting, warning, safety, and navigation. I am the functional manager as delegated by the Director of National Intelligence for GeoWebs, which is effectively the visual domain. Intelligence derived from the visual domain. So think imagery that comes from satellites, imagery that can come from any sorts of sources. If there is an understanding to be drawn, if there's a standard to be made relative to that type of intelligence, that's where I am supposed to be in charge. And then we run as well an organization. The organization, to your question on the scale and people, 16,000 people approximately. About 9,000 are in the Northern Virginia area, a beautiful building that is just about 10 miles or so from the Pentagon. It's technically a Fort Belvoir. 3,500 people are in St. Louis, in a historic building that is right on the river, on the Mississippi. And if we have time, we can talk about the new building that we're not actually in St. Louis, and that's bringing in an entire ecosystem in Middle America that is really fun. About 500 people are in Denver, a really specialized group of people dedicated especially to a special niche for warning. And then there's the swing arm that I am very excited to talk about, because this swing arm of about 1,000 to 1,500 people really make us a combat support agency. We are an intelligence agency. Make no mistake, part of the IC that do report and listen to, take guidance from the Director of National Intelligence. But we are a combat support agency, meaning we're part of the DoD. The paychecks for those civilians, in that 16,000, and of course our military, so they about 3% military. Paychecks come from DoD. But I also report very much to the Secretary of Defense by way of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. So that swing arm I was talking about, it's about 1,500 people or so who are actually at the combatant commands, in the services, in the joint task forces, at forward. And so if there's a visitation that I do and I circulate out there, it's really to see them, see what they're doing, how they're interacting with those commanders. So as you know, we have combatant commands and CENTCOM, UCOM, SpaceCom, etc. And an average of somewhere between 80 to 100 people per, and some of your more, I would just say, active combatant commands might have some days 120, 130. But the advantage of that is they're breathing the same air as that combatant commander. They're listening to what he or she needs and they're delivering. And they don't have to come back to me and ask permission to do something for that commander. We consider them effectively assigned.
Got it. That's very helpful. I am, if you don't mind, going to jump right onto AI, since that's both the topic and the topic of today more broadly. How's it being incorporated? You've been very aggressive with human acquisition, but also on capacity. Describe a little bit how you incorporate it, where you think it's going, and I'll just tack on some use cases. There's been reporting on various delivery on its applications to the U.S. AI intelligence application in Ukraine and in the Middle East. So those use cases elsewhere.
Right. We use the basis of those three words that I started with: targeting, learning, and safety applications. It goes through the applications of AI, so I think it helps. So I need to describe a little bit of each. Targeting, when you're talking about targeting, it's a cycle, it's effectively a business cycle, to be quite honest. It's a good cycle, it's well-founded, and it begins with objectives and guidance, but it moves into target development, which can also involve target discovery. So you have to actually discover something that is eligible and valid from either your rules of engagement or the commander's guidance and objectives. And that brings in some principles that we hold dear as Americans, and especially the American military, most of them conflict wise, such as humanity, necessity, proportionality. And as Americans, we're weird to know those things. Distinctions there. And so the point that I give people I'm proud of, and I just want to recognize that you're doing a great job, that coin says NGA, Vanguard distinction. Distinctions there. Distinction is where you're saying to someone who's about to make a decision, either for a plan or for the engagement against a place on the earth, you're saying, I'm helping you distinguish that this is combatant as opposed to non-combatant. This is enemy as opposed to non. And we take that really seriously in the United States. And so we render at NGA more positive identification calls than just about any agency, certainly in the United States. I can't speak to the world. So that means that gets to this issue of distinction, where you're
having confidence that you're hitting.
Exactly. It's about, I'm going to inform you of my level of confidence that I'm distinguishing this from especially a non-combatant. And identity is very, very important. So imagine, if you will, the scale and at least targeting treatment, where these are things that are probably trying to be hidden. And we've got tremendous growth in the amount of data. So when I say data, think images. Okay, so images are data. They're ones and zeros, so you just have to be images, which makes it very dense. There's a lot of data to go through. And as Americans, we're investing in more and more sources of data, so that constellation across space is growing. So we employ something called computer vision. Everyone's heard of ChatGPT, they've heard of large language models, which involves text, and that's very powerful. Our specialty is in something a little bit different, and that's computer vision, which is the recognition of an object. And a relationship, kind of a human and machine team relationship that goes on, which continues refining the model that goes through all the data.
This is AI in the sense that.
This is using AI and machine learning. It
Is it
starts with
project
machine learning.
or is it?
We're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting there. I just want to make sure everybody understands what, I'm not going to skip right to Maven and then forget about the basics of computer vision. So when an individual human identifies something, and we've got people who've been doing this for 30 or 40 years, that's an advantage that you want to share with the model through a process called data labeling. That's a little bit different than just typing context into what we call structured observations. It's a little bit different. It's something that translates directly to the model. But it's kept in a very organized way that the model ultimately can learn and improve So scale is what, and speed become really the watchwords here. When you're thinking about preparation for a campaign or readiness, you want to ensure that you're fast. You want to make sure that you are complete and you're not intimidated by the size of the area you're looking at. When all of us go through global entry, or you go through TSA, and you're really impressed by that camera that looks at you and it says proceed, you're good. I mean, that's tremendous. We love that technology. That's computer vision. If it were only so easy. Number one, you're voluntarily presenting yourself. Number two, you're faced with about 80% of the field of view of that particular sensor. We don't have that luxury. We're taking images from space in most cases. And while this is a little bit fuzzed up in math, I'm not going to give the exact math where everybody's going to sit there and go to the resolution I'm talking about. We're looking for objects that are distinct, behaviors that are distinct, that are to 100,000ths of the percent of the field of view. Okay? So now you get to understand why you need an X-ray advantage. As the amount of data goes up, as the number of sensors goes up, the data needs to be culled through, and you're looking for very, very minute things in areas that, frankly, they're trying to hide from. So for targeting, that is the essence of target discovery at scale and at speed. Do I think that it's going to become ultimately autonomous? Don't know. I think that that's certainly not an American way of war for offensive operations. I think it is probably on defensive. I refer to my chain of command on that. But we are certainly wanting to always improve upon that possible application. This is where Maven's made an impact. Maven has allowed that process of discovery to be faster, to be complete, to never ignore the role of the human, to inform the human, especially the target engagement authority of levels of confidence, and to do it in a way where it's coded with a graphical user interface that is agile.
Just to be clear, Maven is the AI product that you bring to bear
It's a
on
graphical user interface and ultimately a decision process. Okay, so I would like to say that it's a process that fits into the targeting process specifically. And where the AI and computer vision makes its money is actually in that target discovery piece. And putting it all in a place where it is discoverable relatively easily to the user.
So before I jump into all of the complications that come with that, whether that's state to state or public-private, just on the use case scenario, is that computer vision, and just to fully disclosing that journalist hat on, is Maven and that process of computer vision being brought to bear in case use case scenarios in Ukraine and in Israel's budget.
So I don't think in this menu I would detail exactly where it's being used for real world operations, except just to say we got really happy 4-star commanders out there in places like US UCOM, US CENTCOM, US SpaceCom, and so that's about as detailed as I would really like to go into the real world operations. But this isn't an experiment, okay? And so it's being tested and constantly improved. The code itself allows the entire cycle to be involved in this graphical user interface, which is really powerful for anyone who has been in the military or is currently in the military. That brings two worlds, really 3 or 4 worlds together. It brings in intelligence worlds, it brings in operational worlds, it brings in logistics worlds. So as you're trying to assess not only about a target, but where are you also in your availability of ammunition? Where are you in what is available for this munition in terms of strike asset? And so I think that that's another aspect of what we call NGA Maven, and by extension, this graphical user interface called Maven Smart System. That's what I am seeing in terms of its popularity at those COCOMs, is how agile code is for anyone, not just people on the intel side.
Guys, so just getting then, having moved past the nation-to-nation question, maybe come back to that later, questions out here. The public-private, how much are you describing a system that has been purpose-built inside NGA or DoD more broadly, and how much is this being outsourced to contractors to do the coast where everybody on housing in Ukraine, they're obviously eagerly involved. How much do you ever describe that relationship?
Yeah, so, you described one prime, certainly, but if they were here, I think they'd be very quick to say, and this isn't available, they'd be very quick to say there are another 12 subs. So this has been kind of the evolution of, hey, if there's best in breed in a particular aspect of the targeting cycle, they're going to get involved in a rapidly shared base in that system. So,
So that product is integrated into NAVIN, is that it?
there's being,
Or entities?
oh, sure, yeah, as I say, you described one big
Yeah,
prime,
yeah.
but there are other subs.
Let me just jump in on that, like, value central to your mission as you described into America's strategic interests worldwide. It's a whole other thing, it seems to me, if, you've got, primes running, the AI is providing some level of targeting data there. Do they have to adhere to the same national security memoranda and other requirements that the administration starts putting in place to ensure that we're adhering to America's values?
Well, from an accountability perspective, don't forget, there's someone who's actually making the hire, making the decision as to, at the time of it, this is an acceptable product or not, and this is where we fit as well. So for anyone who's wondering about standards, especially some of the principles that I mentioned before, absolutely. We'll get into some things like certification and accreditation that I think should be pleasant news for anyone who's concerned about this particular technology. So on this code and availability, you mentioned how did we happen to get equipment apart and engineering. And I should tell that story very quickly. So it mainly began as a project, it's called Project Maven, and it was really, the idea was to excite the sector, see in a very unclassified way where there might be applications for AI commercially in defense. It was very successful. Everyone can see that this is something we need to gnaw on and we need to refine. And so the decision was taken just a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, not quite, to find a sponsor where this thing needs to really become more of a project, like more of a program as opposed to a project. It had been a project, it needed to be a program of record. And the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security made the bold decision that should be NGA. And to this day, I think that's the right choice. I'm a big believer in going for that which is hard first. We have the most data. It's computer vision stuff. When you're talking about this much data, you're kind of going for the hardest thing when you say, let's invest in the time and energy of NGA because they've got a lot of data, and so let's go ahead and do that. So that's how it became at least NGA. And then we took less than a year to go through all the machinations to ensure that we met the standards of being a program of record. And that's what it is now. And that really, from a fiduciary perspective, I think is key, where we're now really, really concentrating on ensuring we're not paying twice, that we're really responsible stewards of every dollar that goes into this development, as you would for any other program of record, but also to look at how this truly can become an instrument of national value.
So let me ask you about that too, because obviously the subject of conversation right now is efficiency in government. There have been multiple attempts to start to wrestle with what everybody I think accepts as an outdated defense acquisition approach. Transaction authority was going to be the thing. Now you've used something called commercial solutions over the years. So this is. Are these just little cracks in the acquisition dam, and it's all going to have to be torn up and remade, or especially given your reliance on the commercial sector, whether that's the actual sensors in space or data miners? Is this, or, is this just figuring on the margin? As somebody who's lived that acquisition transition?
Yeah, so my view right now, just as a person who cares, not to mention being a leader, is that this is not on the margins, this is not for show. That the speed of acquisition, everyone really does want it to. And CSOs are a great step. And I'm very pleased to tell you that we do have a CSO, it's called Project Edgar, that's dedicated to having pre-vetted vendors that are ready to go, contract effectively already ready to go for the time that you need commercial analytics. We don't buy pixels, okay, interim buys pixels for us. We do buy analytics, and that gap between a pixel and an analysis is getting really narrow. And so we're spending a lot of money on analysis right now. And so you may have heard about Luno A and B. We've moved out with the identification for Luno A with 10 really good vetted companies that are going to help us with that commercial application, which is largely dedicated to maritime domain awareness. Luno B will be awarded in calendar year 2025. But this Project Edgar, is getting at what the Defense Innovation Unit is identifying as the CSO process, pre-vetted, quick, fast. And so I don't think it's an experiment. I think that it's a demonstration of real time.
Let me ask, getting back again, sort of on the theme of values, but also to impediments to speed, but also retention of values. This administration, especially National Security Council leadership, has been fairly focused on trying to put in place some frameworks and rules, even if interim, for handling AI broadly throughout the government, but specifically on national security measures and also in the intelligence world, most recently with, this thing has a short section at times. I think I have it. Set up some few constraints on what can be acquired by integrated intelligence and by the government. You asked me to comment generally on whether that's been helpful or harmful. Is it an impediment? Is it useful in setting values? Is there too much focus on policy and doing it right versus doing it fast? What's your reaction to this? I mean, there's a lot of brain power and time. And just to throw out an example there, slightly outside of your domain, but there was a good question at another council session on the challenge of protecting abiding by the protections for U.S. persons that the U.S. intelligence community has had to abide by since the introduction of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, when they're sucking up huge amounts of data every day. How do you do that? There must be equivalency. So is this helpful? Is it central to the value proposition of American strategic leadership, or is it getting in the way of the speed that we need to innovate?
A lot of questions there. I'm gonna go for the easy one first, which to me is intel oversight. And so, as someone who has grown up through this community and now my 36th year, I am pre-programmed to submit to intel oversight principles. We don't spy on Americans, period, right? And so I'm very, very wedded to that. If there's going to be a debate on that, that's probably going to be done at the policy level. I'm just going to be a practitioner, and I'm going to ensure that we train our people. So if there's any sort of debate on that, we're going to fall in. But right now, our people, to the person, all 16,000, know exactly what their left right limits are and what they are. And what's very interesting, we can talk about this later, is that there are times we are allowed to get commercial imagery of the United States, but it's when we've got Americans in trouble, like Department of Homeland Security needs some help with a hurricane, and we're part of the search and rescue effort, and that kind of thing. But otherwise, we're committed to our intelligence oversight training and those principles.
Can I just mark that as we go through? There have been instances under your tenure where Homeland Security has come to you and said, you guys have the ability to take this massive data we just sucked up and find the missing person.
It's more acute than that. Okay, it's more acute than that. It's not like we go into the coffers of all of our collects. It's very, very specific. We have a specific need. Ian is an example, Elaine is an example.
Can I just ask you to sign off on that for domestic?
It has to be an official request, and an official request coming in from one of our agencies. In this case, it was FEMA by way of Department of Homeland Security.
And does ODNI, does the Director of National Intelligence have to sign off, or is that?
Actually, once, once it comes in through an accepted process called an MA, that's all we need at that point. And we have people.
It doesn't sound like a huge amount of protection for spying out there.
Well, I think that, again, all of our people know what they're supposed to do. Commercial imagery is made available, and, and so you also have other sources out there. So Weather Patrol is flying around, but they need somebody who actually, from a cartographic perspective, can put it all together for the searchers. And that's what we find, instead of like looking, at really detailed places on the earth, that can be important if you're looking for someone who's missing. But sometimes it's just to help the searchers get organized. Building grid reference systems so that they all have the same reference system when they're saying, I'm going to this particular place. And actually generating waterproof maps and charts, right? And so we have people who have 2 trailers that we have 3 positions for this very mission, with people who are trained to go. They have independent communications, they have diesel generators, they have printers, and they have their training. And they generate maps and charts for search. Once the search is over and you have an idea as to where, if everyone has been saved that is out there, and it becomes more of a kind of a recovery or an assessment, maybe for insurance purposes, we're out. That's it.
I could just say, like, slight chill running down my spine and imagining like the conspiratorial corners of the internet to do with what you just described, but obviously makes a lot of sense.
I agree with that. I'll be honest with you, and I've been talking publicly about this for some time because we're really proud of it. And I'll tell you this, this involves an aspect of recruitment that I think is also very exciting. When I talk to 22-year-olds, they might be interested in defense. They might be interested in breaking things like bad things and, in sort of the targeting world. But they're almost universally interested in safety things. And so the idea of saving Americans is very attractive. Same is true in understanding the Earth. In a safety and navigation mission that we talked about, we have a responsibility for setting the data on which everyone uses as the basis of accuracy and precision, to include in your cell phones, to include in our maps in the military. It's called WJS-84, World Geodetic System 1984. We set that, and we maintain that.
This is a good reminder that what we see in public facing social media and so forth is not necessarily representative of general patriotism or set values of American more broadly. A good opportunity to switch now over 2:30 to questions from you all. I'd like to take questions and remind everybody that this meeting is on the record. And please, a reminder, when you're called on stand, say your name, identify yourself, and please make a question or a nuisance. I'll interrupt, you'll be embarrassed, I'll be embarrassed. With that, any questions in the room? Mr. Lawrence.
Well, thank you for
those who don't know.
Thank you for a very thoughtful presentation. I'd like to ask you to address the issue that is becoming more and more, I guess, timely or discussed, and that is the issue of the Russians and their nuclear capabilities. You've talked about intelligence, you've talked about operations, as a third one that I forgot in that spectrum. What does your utilization of AI tell you, or how do you enable it to tell you the probability or the capability of a country, Russia in this case, to utilize process internally that enables you to duplicate, or at least try to duplicate, the kind of things that Russia is thinking about. And I say this because deterrence, in large measure, is a psychological phenomenon. And they have to conclude that this would be a bad thing for them because such and such should happen, that is not a negative thing. So it has to be credible and it has to be capable. How do you use AI to give you that kind of information so that you can figure out what they're thinking and determine how far you want to go to?
And I just
Short deterrence.
And I'll just add on to that. So, one, have you seen any change in nuclear posture, especially in recent days of looking back and forth with guidance on nuclear to that point? And with regard to his deterrence question, is some of what you collect on what Russia has and is doing then available for being made public to let them know that we know that?
I understand. So, you're addressing the warning problem. We've been going about on that. So we talked about targeting, we talked about safety and navigation. We didn't do much in the way of warning. So I'm going to back up a little bit and I'll move into the specific question. So warning is effectively the big industrial piece of what we do in engineering. It involves looking back and looking forward. It involves an assessment based on a baseline. So you establish a baseline of behaviors and equipment, and then you look for change. And then you try to predict the change as well. So warning is, that, as I say, that's where we really, really invest most of our time and energy. And I hope that is of some comfort to everyone. And there is no place where we invest more time in warning than in assessing any chance or indication of some sort of vertical escalation that could involve nuclear weapons. Every single day at 8:45 in the morning, I sit down with our team and we have a good old-fashioned discussion. It is effectively a gentle, Socratic discussion where I'm asking them questions and just seeing what they, it's a nice way to have a conversation with our analysts, especially people who've been awake all night. And we talk about the products that we generated by typically 4 in the morning that then go out, to some of the highest levels of the government. Conversation, we start talking about the next product. That meeting always begins with the same graphic on what we know, don't know about the possibility of vertical escalation. I have mentioned this in multiple press engagements as a way to, I hope, bring solace to any American listening who might be concerned. This is what we cut our teeth on. When you go back into our history, especially the days of NPIC, the National Photographic Interpretation Center, some very, very important intelligence victories, especially if you go back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, where people really became interested in imagery and what imagery can tell you and can tell the president especially. And so, in the deterrence conundrum, certainly you gotta have capability, will, and communications. I would put this kind of in the communications category. Whether there are discussions or not about what we may see, I leave that to policymakers and the people who actually execute deterrence policy. But I know this, we are over-communicating all the time what we know and don't know relative to the chances of vertical escalation. And this has been, I think, one of the mainstays of our work relative to Russia and Ukraine. So we've never lost track of that mission throughout the entirety of whether it was in the pre-invasion to where we are today. With the Ukrainians, the power of imagery is also very real. While I won't necessarily discuss much detail, I know this, my mandate and our mandate at NGA, 16,000 people who are given the mandate to ensure that the Ukrainians can defend themselves. Now, one of the great things about some of the commercial discoveries and I would say constellations that have been put up in space is that it's easy to share. It's not necessarily national exquisite stuff where you're trying to keep that edge. It's actually something you can share. And that's something that, 400,000 people in a portal called GEGD, excluding SGO insemination, GEGD, including vetted Ukrainians, have a way to get their information and their imagery through that. That's the commercial. And that itself is a form of transparency. Now, this has been twisted. In the past, I had somebody, I think, report in RT, of course, it was a loaded, kind of twist where they said, well, that means then that you were informing the Ukrainians before Kursk. I said, no. Let's be very clear. Kursk was a surprise. David Cohen said that himself, the deputy at the CIA. But make no mistake, in terms of transparency, commercial has been very helpful to the Ukrainians in terms of what we know as a country about vertical escalation. We never stop making that a priority.
Thank you very much. This is actually with CT Group. If you could talk a little bit, I know you don't really want to talk about real world situation, but maybe a hypothetical might be in order. Let's assume a non-state actor is targeting firing missiles at commercial shipping in a navigable seaway and at U.S. naval vessels as well.
What was your lead?
What kind of intelligence challenges, from your point of view, does that present when they're using mobile launchers that are disguised as civilian vehicles?
I think you're adding that dimension of mobility. I'd be irresponsible to just gloss over that. And mobiles are hard. I was in charge of relocating targeting at U.S. CENTCOM for Iraq and Kuwait, one of the hardest things I've ever done. So anytime you get something that involves wheels and mobility, it's a much harder situation from a collection, exploitation, and time especially. So I think I hope that addresses your question. I think it's probably obvious, but at the same time, I think that's why you asked. It's like, are mobiles that hard? The mobiles are still that hard.
But I think it is public knowledge that maybe we can deploy in Red Sea and in Yemen now.
So, like I say, I keep it at the U.S. CENTCOM level. I don't know if CENTCOM talks about what they employ, but I'm very, very pleased with our relationship with U.S. CENTCOM.
Hi, Tim Kavarsh from Harding here. I have a question about accountability in decision-making processes.
I'm sorry.
Accountability. Do you hold decision-making processes that involve artificial intelligence to different standards as human actors, and how do you combat algorithm aversion by which entities within your organization might be adverse to having artificial intelligence take more market share of the cumulative set of decision-making processes in your organization?
Yeah, so keyword here, I love this question. It's exactly the right question. The accountability is still with the human. Accountability is still with the commander. And I said this in a couple of different venues. NGA Naval Smart System, that is a decision-making aid. It is an enabler to decision-making. It is not a decision maker. Really, really important. We are not at a point in our history of decision-making and the way of combat preparation, where we're looking at unwitting enemies being hit by things that, are decisions by machines. That's certainly not what I've been instructed to do. But we do owe it to humans who are making these decisions, either in preparation or in execution, to get them the best and most complete and fastest solution we can. So where I do see a responsibility is on the human side, in certification, and then on the model side in accreditation. And this kind of gets into, you wanted to go here, so I'm going to go ahead and go here. And when we're talking about what I have a responsibility, and we at NGA have a responsibility to do, it's to set standards and enforce them. So early on, it was clear based on the executive order the president put out, and also just on our own intuition, that we needed to certify our people. Some of the principles that we hold dear, they're going to touch that code. They're going to touch that code. They're going to know about humanity, necessity, proportionality, distinction. And they're literally going to take the pledge at the end of their training that they're going to adhere to those things. And so this is, for us, it's very simple. GeoInt, responsible AI training, great, for short. Everyone who touches the code goes through great training. And it's actually really good. We've now been establishing a way to provide that training to a lot of people in military commands. more recently, it became clear to me that models are becoming more plentiful, and if it's the visual domain, and especially visual intelligence, in a process, whether it be learning or whether it be targeting, I'm going to and want to ensure that we have a chance to evaluate, so that if somebody wants to use this model, they know the rigor it's been through. And so we have established a pilot that is called A-Game. That's the accreditation of GeoSpace AI models, A-Game. And it's effectively founded on sort of the risk continuum that we set for collateral damage estimation. It's to tell people what level of risk an evaluation might either have mitigated or hasn't gotten there yet. So but instead of like in collateral damage, typically you have one layer and then you didn't pass that, so you got to move up to the next one. In A-Game, in the accreditation model, you pass one, you move to the next. You pass that one, you move to the next. And it's about looking at your documentation, the certification of the people, your training regimen. When it's really basic, then it might move up to level 2, which will be a little more about training data, the data that you use in the process of building the model. Level 3 will even have more scrutiny, looking at your outputs relative to the inputs, and then level 4, we probably won't get to for a while, but it's at least a model where if somebody's going to say, I need this model for our purposes, whether it's warning, targeting, or safety navigation, they have some idea about its quality. Okay. You, Kraetzer.
Right here.
Thank you. I'm John Manager. I'm the Nuclear Security Fellow. I'm also a former U.S. Navy navigator, so I can attest to how amazing the NGA charts are. So I'm wondering, you must be sitting on a gigantic pile of data. That data must be increasing exponentially. And within 5 to 10 years, and certainly after that, we will have the ability to perform some kind of time series analysis on the data, providing you an additional layer in the form of time in mapping discrete events. And do you have any plans to which you can speak about applying that time series analysis to generative predictions using AI to provide not just real-time intelligence to decision maker, but a model like predictive intelligence?
Yeah. So I'll answer that you're exactly right in everything you just said, and the applicability of coffers or intelligence coffers. That data should never go away. Why? Because most of our eureka moments happen actually after we've got, well after the original collection, we've had some new count, some asymmetric count, maybe another sort of intelligence source that triggers us then to go back into our coffers and put the breadcrumbs together and really get the new stuff. And so you will not find many, if any, members of our team wanting to get rid of that data ever. Data loss is a bad thing for us. Now to what you're talking about. And I addressed this recently in one of the conferences I spoke at, multimodal. So we're very, very much into the visual domain right now. But to really get powerful in terms of whether you're correct and you're moving towards an accuracy or at least some level of dependability, confidence, you're going to add some other modes in there like text and maybe even some signatures. And so, yes, we're going to really concentrate on some large multimodal models, LLMs, for our future, that I think will equip still a human decision maker to make decisions based on sound predictions. This is still untapped. It's still new. But the rate things are moving right now, I think our chances of moving into very health prediction.
Masons is currently on the group.
The function manager for Mason is the DIA director, Jeff Bruce.
Thank you very much. Very interesting talk. January 10th, it's going to be 10 days before January 20th. And there's going to be a big change in government during that period of time. Could you talk a little bit about, you have a dedicated, extremely highly expert group of people, some of whom are going to leave. And then you're going to bring in new people who will have to be trained. That sounds like a big ask. Could you tell us about that transition, please?
And so we're talking about in this particular election year, as opposed to any other year, January?
We're talking about January 2025.
Right. So, this is not a problem. I carry this with me anytime because I love to give the oath to people. This is the oath that we take, every single person at NGA. And so the oath is to the Constitution. It's going to be the same oath that somebody new coming on board, and give them the same oath. Because it's the people we've had for 20, 30, 40 years that they still abide by the oath. It's doing the same oath on the 19th as it is on the 21st. So, expertise, so it's all about trade. I'm really proud of a couple things when it comes to our trade craft. We have a very good college. It's called NGA College. And so we have 11 certifications. And that's high when you compare it to other disciplines in the intelligence community. And so the premium for us, this is a very specialized trade craft. And so we'll be prepared. If we have a lot of people to train, we're going to be prepared for that. I don't find it daunting. And right now, our people love what they do so much that I'm not hearing any whispers about people leaving, and that's just not. I'm very excited about what we're doing right now and getting better at it.
Somewhat relatedly, and try to use both waters, any non-white male questions? There we go, I'm back. Thank you.
At least 50% of that. Hi, hello, Dombrowski. I'm on the FEMA National Advisory Council, and as part of that work, we went over to NASA to look at the work that they're doing in geomapping. I'm curious how you collaborate with them to help see if there are maybe any gaps or other ways that you can kind of fill in the picture that way. Thank you.
We love NASA, and if you were to allow us about an hour, we could go through a pretty rich history of the space program in the United States, to include mapping of the moon for the original lunar series. As it stands now, I think that's still, right now, the interest is in NASA taking that mission for future lunar events, but we have responsibilities in space, and this is one of the reasons we actually changed our motto. Our motto used to really concentrate on the rock itself, on the Earth. It seemed like all we did was look down and address the Earth down. And we wanted to address two extremes, one being the seabed and the other being space. And so we finished our motto. It's now know the world, show the way, which leads to the navigation piece from seabed to space. So we do look up. We don't talk about it very much. Okay, this is where it's difficult sometimes to talk to Americans about how. Okay, we just leave that one off. We don't really discuss the how, but we do look up. And we do make assessments and responsible behaviors in space as opposed to irresponsible behaviors in space. So whether it's the Space Force, whether it's Space Com, or whether it's NASA, they all care with regard to what we're distinguishing, the level of distinction that we make.
Let me just tack on something to that. You guys, I think several years ago, we had assessed competition with our adversaries overseas. I remember different factors and people were surprised to find that in fact China, despite not necessarily being a pace with us on AI, is less information, outperforming us than we're very science. Can you speak to how the U.S. is doing in this very large Russian China?
Yeah, so it's an assessment question. I love that assessment. I think that assessment's incredibly important. Typically, though, it's in closed channels where we have these discussions. But I think a fair way to answer an assessment question is like this. We all have to be impressed by the growth of their coverage of surveillance and intelligence trade craft. Correct, because that was your question. However, what I think remains to be seen, this country has, I'm going to say say perfected, but constantly refined the process of rendering bad news quickly on the machine. Okay, that's what 20 years of war on terror will do. Really refine the pace at which we tell our national command authority that there's something very serious needed in the world right now. I think that the jury's still out there. And so I would offer that that's a really important gap in any sort of medicine is that I know for a fact that everyone in uniform, everyone in the defense industries, everyone who does this national security work, we're dedicated to moving bad news quickly up.
I'm Paul Green, Central Group. I have a question about some of the issues people have raised about people, training, vast amounts of data. It seems like software can be a solution for that. Curious if you could give a raw strokes of from a capital allocation of your budget, how much is going to people and training versus software will have services that bring software.
Right.
Because the history of Department of Defense is to acquire more hardware, or they package the software in a platform. And you're an agency that is doing the PED, process exploration, dissemination that is totally analytics driven, not product driven, so you're at the forefront of maybe acquiring pure software. Here's how you're thinking about this, what do you want that software to people ratio to get to the future?
Yeah, so I wouldn't be able to quantify it. I'll just say, I think the best way to answer your question is from an AI lens. And a conundrum that we have relative to it, AI is great. One day it may actually do the work of a lot of people, but it sure does take a lot of people to get there. And that's not a joke, it's for real. And it gets to this issue of data labeling. It gets to teaching the machine. In the machine learning process, you have to have people do that. I had a question early on, a year and a half ago. Should we consider incentivizing the early retirement of people who aren't necessarily IT savvy or comfortable with AI? And that was about the fastest meeting I've ever had. I said, people who have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years are exactly the people who are going to be part of modernization when we teach these algorithms and these models what they're looking at. And to get into nuance, and to get into the things that are so incredibly difficult about this business. So the issue we have here, and this is not to lobby for additional resources, I won't do that. I would tell you from an efficiency perspective, this agency is doing extremely well with what they are providing. But our people go to work, our average analysts will go to work with a stack of requirements, and they have to get through that during the course of the day, and they have to characterize what they see. And there's things we call structured observations, and that's the process. They're trained to do that, and because they typically look at the same places on the earth, they know immediately if they've got something anomalous, and in some cases, they're not even typing, they're picking up the phone. That's very powerful. It's very difficult for me to come in and say, hey, by the way, I need you to spend 15% of your time also investigating this. That's not fair. At that point, they're going to come back and say, I have these requirements, these are warning related things, I need to do this. What falls off? So what do? We pay critically. And we made some news on this here recently. We have seen a $700 million request for proposal in the Sequoia, the largest data labeling RFP that DoD has ever put out. Now, part of my vision, and getting to your question, I'm not going to give you an exact ratio, it's not a mathematical, but my vision is one day we won't have to pay necessarily for data labeling, it will be part of the national trade record. But I don't, in this particular moment, as busy as our people are, I would be irresponsible to tell you that because I have to respect how committed they are to that queue and their structured observations, while at the same time we're developing these models and making them better.
100% endorse the idea that people at the senior end of their career are very, very valuable in this. In fact,
Lieutenant Kraetzer, CaMMVetsMedia, and I want to thank you for your service to our country, first off. And we cover West Point considerably. A lot of the cadets we speak with say they're studying geospatial. They have programs that send 25 cadets into the cyber branch of the U.S. Army. I was just curious, the relationship of someone in the military working on cyber and somebody who might be working on geospatial. Are they parallel, or do they come together?
Data science has a lot of similarities. So data for us, when we're talking about multimodal especially, we certainly are experts in the visual data and making sense of that, building understanding. But we're always looking for additional sources of data and applying data science to find trends, okay? And so I'm ready to talk to anybody out there, whether they're military or not, who actually wants to help our national security challenge through data science, if they can properly train in data science. There are some things, though, that whether they come up through some sort of military training or purely academic training, there's some things that I would like to sensitize you to some areas where we really need some help in the recruitment category, and that's in geodesy and the study of the earth. So we talked about WGS-84 and the essence of precision. Well, that also entails knowing everything about the core, and in some cases, the crust, the change in the spin rate of the Earth, the changes in gravity everywhere on the Earth, the changes in the poles, and yes, the changes in the water. We have to understand mean sea level, and we literally determine mean sea level because the essence of accuracy for a chart, for an aim point, for anything where you need precision, is the z-axis. X and Y, flat long, everybody can do that. But it's going to be wrong if you don't have the elevation correct. But you have to use some basis to start your elevation in sea level. So we are very into hydrography, bathymetry, and understanding the changes and encroachment in some cases of water, changes in the poles, changes in ice. So I would implore you, if you know young people that want to help a great team and help this nation, and are interested in geodesy, we've got a place for them. And so this is a very important part of kind of the ecosystem between government and what we do, and academia, and business for that matter. So I went on a little bit of a tangent to your question, but I do want to emphasize that this is an area that we have to improve our recruitment in some of the earth sciences, especially geodesy.
We are at time, and of course, for you and the rules, so thank you all for attending. Thank you so much, Vice Admiral.